I think we've seen a really intriguing trend in League One in previous seasons where the standard, for instance, the 21-22 season was extremely high towards the top of the table where, for instance, Plymouth Argyle missed out on automatic promotion missed out on the top six even, so with 80 points. And I think it feels a little bit different at the moment, doesn't it? It feels like there's a bit more room for form to really impact things and for some sort of, if you like, social mobility in League One, just because of, you look at the run that Leyton Orient have been on to get into the top six, having been 20th at the end of October. I think that it's similar in the automatic promotion race, because while Wycombe Wanderers have been outstanding this season, certainly under Matt Bloomfield and then the interim head coach, Sam Grace, you do wonder if they could be a little bit vulnerable in that second spot, just because they've got Mike Dodds in as a coach. We know he's an excellent coach. He comes with some great reputations from people like, Jude Bellingham, Joe Bellingham, and Luke O'Nien, and clearly he's a fantastic coach. But whether he's going to be able to adapt to being the number one and to getting a team over the line in the automatic promotion race, it's new ground for Mike Dodds. Is he going to have what it takes? Conversely, you go to Wrexham. Phil Parkinson does have the experience, both with Wrexham previously from the National League and League Two, and also from this level with Bolton Wanderers. However, there have been question marks over the Red Dragons away from home. And then you come to Stockport County, who, like Wrexham, came up from League Two last season, but lost Louis Barry in January. They did manage to keep up some excellent form after that, but are they going to have quite enough to get into the top two? Probably a question mark there. So lots that goes into it. I find it really hard to pick a team that I'm very confident is going to finish in the top two, along with Birmingham City, who I'm very confident will get there. And that's where I'm really excited about this evening's podcast, just because you don't quite know what's going to happen. So plenty to get stuck into on this League One podcast. Yes, welcome along to EFL Debate. Before we start, you could do us a massive favour by getting subscribed to us on YouTube and on Spotify. That would help us out a lot if you enjoy our podcasts. For now, I'm delighted to be joined by my co-host for the evening, Jake Tong, from the Here for the Lincoln podcast. Jake, Lincoln obviously not involved in the automatic promotion race, unfortunately. So from a neutral perspective, no skin in the game, what have you made of it?
Really fascinating, Gab. I was listening to you there while I was just trying to scoff the last bit of my chicken and rice.
Do you know what, Jake? I made it longer so that you can get those last.
I thought you did.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was thinking you're absolutely bang on. Like the top end of this league for a couple of years now has been absolutely balmy in terms of the points getting picked up. Like, for example, we had Sheffield Wednesday, didn't we, the other year on 96 points, and they only came third. If you get 96 points in a league, you tend to bloody win it. So. Yeah, I think it's been really fascinating. I like all the teams that you've got involved in this conversation. I've seen them all, and I think they're all good in their own ways. And I think it'd be really interesting as a neutral to see which one it is that's going to end up going up with Birmingham, because, well, you guys have pretty much got 2 feet in the championship. So it'd be good to see who joins you. And like I say, they've all got strengths. Like, for example, you've got Stockport, who can just go out all gun-ho attack and pretty good at the back. Wrexham win a lot of tight games, which makes me think maybe they're better suited to the playoffs. I don't know. And then you've got Wycombe, who are just... They're an unknown entity at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah. I almost think you have to treat them on a completely different sort of level, almost without Matt Bloomfield or even Sam Grace. Like, I'd actually be more confident in Wycombe Wanderers finishing in the top two if they'd kept Sam Grace on for the end of the season, even if Mike Dodds has a much greater coaching pedigree, just because he doesn't know the players. They don't know him. There is that uncertainty.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got to think about Parky and Challoner. They've both been in post for a long time now. A long time in terms of football, because we know managers chop and change. So I think that consistency might well do Stockport or Wrexham particularly quite good. And Dodds, like you say, comes with a really good reputation. But whether he can transform it, we've seen it with managers coming out of other clubs and higher levels, who have not held a head coach position before. We've seen some do really, really well, and we've seen some sort of crash and burn. So we're really intrigued to see how that goes on with Wycombe. But yeah, looking forward to the podcast, Gab. It should be a good one.
Absolutely. Just before we bring in our first guest on, Matt Jones from the Racecourse Ramble, I did want to ask you, Jake, whether you think it's 1 from 3, or do you think that we have to be open-minded about somebody putting together an incredible run from the chasing pack? Because if we go through it, you got Wycombe in second on 64. You got Wrexham, even not Wreckham. They have wrecked a few teams. Wrexham in third on 61. Stockport a few points below on 57. But then below those 3 teams, you've got Huddersfield on 55, so 9 points off. Leyton Orient on 53 with 11 points off. Charlton on 53 as well, and so are Bolton Wanderers. And Bolton under Stephen Schumacher, they're 11 points off at the moment. I mean, if there is a bit of a drop-off from Wycombe, could Bolton be one of those teams that maybe capitalise, and possibly Huddersfield as well?
You've beat me to it, Gab. Bolton are the ones to watch for me. Obviously, they've won, I think, 3 in a row under Shuey now. They look an absolute different entity to what they were under Ian Evatt. They're playing with confidence. The manager, I watched them, I think it was in the win against Crawley, where Schumacher he's so comfortable with making changes, whereas Ian Evatt was just so rigid and stubborn into his approach. So I think Schumacher, with let's not forget, Gab, this Bolton group are not only a well put together group, an expensive one, but they've got really good qualities all over the pitch. They've got really good players that are match winners. And all it takes is, Gav, for Bolton to maybe win, I don't know, 10 of their last 14. And I think this Bolton team could go on a run like that.
That would get them to 83 points. And I mean, I think it's not going to be far off that gets you automatic promotion this season. So
I think Charlton maybe the reason I discount someone like Huddersfield, obviously at the minute they're in bad form, aren't they?
Yeah, they're not playing well enough for me to go.
And their superstar striker's injured, Gab. That's an absolute royal shame, isn't it? Not for me, it's not. But yeah, no, Leyton Orient. I mean, I watched them against you guys the other night.
They were brilliant in the first 10 minutes against us. They
were. This will really irritate Parksy. They remind me a lot of us from a year ago. I think Leyton Orient will make some naive mistakes and drop out. You've got Charlton. Nathan Jones have been promoted out at this level before. I'm not saying Charlton are going to go up automatically, but you'd imagine that they might find themselves finishing above Orient. So, yeah, no, I think, in answer to your question, Gab, Bolton bloody Wanderers. Cole's going to love me.
Well, that could be one to watch. For now, let's bring in our first guest of the evening, Matt Jones from the Racecourse Ramble podcast. Matt, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. Talk to me about how you're feeling about Wrexham's form right now after, I suppose the 2-1 victory at Mansfield on Sunday before the obvious the defeat on penalties to Peterborough in midweek in the EFL Trophy semi-final.
Yeah, a bit flat this week now, Gab. Good evening, both of you. I hope you're well. The home form is become the concern now. So we're picking up wins away from home, which we weren't doing consistently all season. And now the home form, the once fortress Kairos, as it was called, has now obviously been breached as we've lost 2 league games on the trot, and then you can call what you want last night, can't you? You know, it's a cup game with rotated players, but again, you've thrown away a 2-0 lead at home against a team that I described as, no disrespect, is on its knees. It was, it's been struggling. As I know they've beat Huddersfield in the week, but basically they've been on the knees. So I think the confidence will be shook. We've obviously lost Andy Cannon this week to his ACL, which was from the Mansfield game. I was at the Mansfield game, and I saw another Phil Parkinson-like performance, which concerns me. No disrespect to any Phil Parkinson fanatics. Just put the claimer out there. But I think, Gab, you know my thoughts now, don't you? You know, it can be underwhelming, although it's delivered results early in the season. But my problem is that I'm not sure the performances will deliver results at the end of the season when it matters. Sorry for the ramble.
Well, that's the title of your podcast, isn't it?
Well, that's why, yeah.
Jake, what do you make of Wrexham? It's an interesting point, actually. Back-to-back home defeats in the league. Not something we'd have anticipated.
Well, no, I remember going to Wrexham at the back end of November when they were like winning every bloody week, and they beat us 1-0, and it felt a little bit unjust then. It perhaps maybe does even more so now that other teams have gone there and won. I watched them on Sunday as well because I have no life, and watched them on Sunday at 3:00 because I had nothing to do.
Because you've got a brilliant life and you're studying the wonder.
It's because I want to see Mansfield suffer, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it massively. I agree with Matt. Really, it was very attritional. I thought Mansfield perhaps after they scored maybe looked like they were going to score again, and Wrexham really sort of weathered a storm a little bit. And I think sometimes, certainly in home games, I think like Wrexham have become used to weathering storms. They get themselves in front, and teams then, because it's Wrexham and because of the Hollywood cameras or whatever it is, they up their game for Wrexham, and it's a little bit unfair, but it is what it is. It comes with the territory of being the club owned by Ryan Reynolds. Gab, you would have seen the same at St Andrews many a time this year as well. So I think I would describe it the same way as I would describe sort of Charlton under Nathan Jones. It's not attractive football unless you're winning.
Correct.
We all know that you can play beautiful football and get relegated. I saw it with MK Dons a couple of years ago under Liam Manning, etc. Or you can play, marginal gains and win. And Wrexham have been really good at doing that. I think out of any of the three, and I'm not saying this because Matt's here, I think Wrexham have probably the best chance of the three of going up in second place. However, if they didn't, I would be confident in Wrexham winning the playoffs because of I feel like Wrexham are very good. Arguably, it comes after they've just lost the cup game, but I feel like Wrexham would be very good at cup football over two legs. I think they'd be able to go to an away ground, certainly with the new away form, how they'd be getting on Sunday, etc., and going and getting a result. Whereas I don't think a lot of teams, I think Stockport, I wouldn't back them over two legs, perhaps like I would Wrexham. So, yeah, it's not been pretty, like Matt said, but when you're third in League One, where they are, I'm not overly sure you can complain too much, especially given it's their first year back. So Matt, shut up, stop moaning.
Yeah, I get it.
Matt, you just be grateful for what you've got.
And we should be. I get that. I know. Maybe I should just sit in my box and be quiet.
But yeah, no, it's weird, Gab, isn't it? Because they were so strong at home, where I think they only dropped points in 3 home games before the Stevenage game. I think there was a draw with Huddersfield, a draw with Cambridge. I'm desperately trying to remember the other one which you drew, Birmingham. That was it. So it has shocked me. What do you think has been that turnaround at home, Matt? Because you were so strong. Has Phil Parkinson changed things at home? Do you think teams have gone? Maybe at the start of the year, they tried to come and get at you a little bit and play at you. You could just pick them off on the counter attack. Have teams now come to sit in a low block? And I remember us speaking before, Matt, actually, and you said that the way to beat Wrexham is by giving Wrexham the ball. Do you think, though, Ori and Stevenage who have come to the racecourse and beaten you recently, is that what they've done?
No, Stevenage played us off the park. They played really sharp, fast, 1-2, quick movement, and Wrexham looked like they'd never played against it before. As if we don't practice that in training, it was. They looked shocked by it. So I think that it would have been arrogant to think you could maintain that in League One, in my opinion. So at some point you were always going to draw, lose. You're not going to win every game, are you? It is going to end. And I think once you get the chink in the armor, then it gives everybody else, perhaps that follows, some encouragement. So I think that formidability, is that a word? I'm not sure it is. I think I might have made that up. I think that gave everybody some encouragement. So that aura has gone, perhaps. About playing at the racecourse, and then obviously, like all teams, you get some injuries and some illness and some of that, and then you're having to scrap through that middle section of the season, and we perhaps didn't cope with it as well as we could. And then I think about games over Christmas where we've won them by bringing Stephen Fletcher on with 10 minutes to go. Unbelievable player. can't keep doing that every week, can you? You can't be we can't be reliant on that. And I think we were reliant on that. We've not coped well, in my opinion, because we're not adaptable enough and not flexible enough to make some changes, and we're too safe in our mentality. I think Phil Parkinson likes to be in a game either winning or drawing at minute 70, and then he likes to have a little tinker. And I think I would personally, not in an arrogant way, don't take this wrong, I would like us to go for teams from the start and win the game by half time, because I think that's what the big teams do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Matt, talk to me about the work ethic of Ollie Rathbone, because I have a follower called Bryn's Barn on Twitter, and literally every week Bryn's telling me about how good Ollie Rathbone's been and how much ground he's covered, and just the consistency that he provides is phenomenal, really.
Yeah, he's sensational. It's really interesting because for the first month, Gab, he got messed about when he first came. We played him off a striker and here and there because we were just trying to fit him in. That was never the long-term goal, was to play him there. They were just trying to get him fit and get him integrated, and they messed him about. So it was 4 to 6 weeks we were watching him. He was coming in and out, and we were thinking, we're not really sure what we've got here. And this seems to be a thing with Phil Parkinson. But then suddenly he's burst onto the scene. He is a proper energizer bunny of a player. He literally doesn't stop. But to his credit, and by his own admission, he's also then added the goals. Not double figure goals. I think he's probably got 4 or 5 now. But they've been at key times, game winning goals. And he's one of the only players, I think, if we went up, there's probably only a handful of them that could cope with the Championship. He looks a level above, and he's an 8 out of 10 every week currently for us. He's a real game changer, and he's carried us. He carried us through about a 3 or 4 week spell. His drive and his impetus was carrying us through games. He was coming on in Virtue Trophy games and sort of getting us through games. Not necessarily scoring, but assisting and being involved in the moves that led to goals. So he's been a real shining light this season. He's been a real good acquisition. So Bryn is absolutely right that to point out Ollie Rathbone, as you know.
Can I ask you about Max Cleworth?
Yeah, of course.
He scored a wonderful goal for a centre half. I wouldn't have been. You'd have been mistaken if that was a centre forward that scored that on Sunday. I mean, how important do you think it is to have someone that's come through the club system, who's 21, 22 years of age, made 100+ appearances? I mean, we've got one in the shape of Sean Rowan, who is outstanding. Just tell everyone how amazing it must be to see Max Cleworth, and he's made the step up, and he's made it look genuinely simple. He's probably been one of the better defenders in the league so far this year.
Yeah, so he has his moments, as all growing young defenders do, right? But Parkinson, the interesting thing is that when some players have a moment, Parky pulls them straight away. Whereas with Max, he's letting him learn and letting him come back next week and work through it and face the challenge. He's comfortable on the ball, which is nice. He'll drive forward with it when encouraged and when needed. And that was key to our second half at Mansfield. Don't expect you to have paid any attention to that because it was an attritional game. But second half, because of the likes of him driving through the lines of Mansfield, that made a big difference for us. But he's very accomplished. He's got, think of the experience he's got now. And he is showing the way. Our academy is catching up, because for many years we didn't have the funds really to have an academy. So it's coming back to life now. We've got another one who played last night in Harry Ashfield, a midfielder. He's showing the way for the likes of Ashfield, who will follow, and the others that will come through this academy. And everybody likes one of their own, don't they? You know,
Yeah, you've not had it for a while, Matt. I don't think somebody coming through. I thought the academy had a bit of a hiatus at one stage.
Yeah, well, as I said, you know, it died a death when we had Gary Mills years ago, and he wanted every penny basically to go into the first team. You know, we were at a peak national, you know, when everything was going towards getting us out of the National League. So they kind of kiboshed the majority of it, and it was run on bare bones, if that makes sense. Whereas now, obviously, you know, we're building a multi-million-pound facility for them, so we can have Cat 3 status. So he is the North Star, isn't he? He is the example. He's going to be the shining light. Now, will he stay with us forever? Probably not. When will he go? Who knows? But I think he has got a pretty high ceiling. You know, I think, you know, Jordan Davis might have been the last one, if you a name that might ring a bell. But he went away and came back. So is that the same? I'm not sure, because he went away to Brighton and came back. So yeah, he's a very good defender. He is he's learning to play with different people, because we keep swapping out who plays alongside him. But interestingly, he seems to now be the mainstay, and everybody else seems to change around him. So that's from a manager like Parky, who's obviously vastly experienced, regardless of what you think of him. That obviously tells you a lot in my eyes.
Matt, do you think the profile of defender Wrexham have got has sort of evolved over the last couple of years? Because I think when you were in the National League, I think of Aaron Hayden, I think of Will Boyle. I'm sure there are some other sort of no-nonsense centre-halves, if you like, that you'd put in a similar bracket. Whereas I suppose this season you've got Ewan O'Connell, who when I remember seeing him at Walsall, and at Rochdale, I really liked him as a ball-playing centre-half. I felt like he's very cultured. I've thought that for a long time. But I've never looked at Ewan O'Connell and thought that's a really dominant defender who's going to head away everything that comes into the penalty area. And maybe that's changed at Wrexham. But it just seems like with Tommy O'Connor on the left for back three as well, and a young defender in Max Clearworth, you know, is the profile of defender changing, and you're going a little bit away from those kind of experienced box defenders and more towards sort of maybe cultured ball-playing types?
I get your point. I think actually Owen O'Connell's weakness is his defending. Ironically, he is obviously much better at carrying the ball out from the back and his passing. I think you've got to have the right players around him, and Max Clearworth can complement him. I'm not sure that we've sorted the left side out yet. So O'Connor was a converted midfielder when we got him from Burton. Yeah. He was a holding midfielder. Although I believe he'd played wing back at Southampton early in his career.
He'd also played left of a diamond, I think, under Steve Evans at Gillingham at this level. So he's a very versatile operator, isn't he?
So he was there to start with, and then Lewis Brunt has come in.
Of course,
who came in from the Leicester stroke.
He'd been at Mansfield, hadn't he?
Stroke Mansfield in the summer, and supposedly was on his way to Peterborough, wasn't he? Ironically, after last night, because Darren McAntony had a moan about that, the fact that we'd taken him. Is it changing? I'm not sure. I could confidently say it is, because we're just getting better play. Like that, we've got Dan Scarr, and Dan Scarr barely kicks a football now. I mean, that was a big player to bring in the summer. I thought this guy's going to have to start, surely. And he's been the captain in the Virtue Trophy and just fills in now and again when O'Connell gets sent off or does something really daft, gets dropped for a game. So we've got a blend of all the different types. And I'm not sure.
But Matt, it does seem, sorry if I can just come in there, it does seem unusual for me for Phil Parkinson, given what we know about him. Like, I remember his Bolton side had David Wheater and Mark Beavers, who are both very good at defenders. It seems really surprising to me that for a Phil Parkinson side, and given the way that his teams like to play, you'd have the middle centre back in a back three and be able to say really progressive defender, but his limitations are actually in defending. That seems a little bit un-Parkinson-like.
Yeah, well, yeah, we would have to speak to him to know for sure. We need him to write a book or something, don't we, to give us the answer to these questions. And maybe you'd say he's evolving. It doesn't feel like that when you watch the football. It just feels like we've just got better players who've got more accurate passing to knock it into channels and to knock it up to a big man or Sam Smith as it is now. But so we've got the blend. We've got a good blend of players, but I'm not sure he's settled on them, and I think that's a problem for us. And then we keep getting since Christmas, we've had individual errors. O'Connell has been a couple of games on the trot. We had Shrewsbury and Barnsley where he struggled and then got pulled from the side. So I don't know. I could confidently say that, but I understand what you're coming at me with, Gab.
Can we switch it up to the top end of the pitch then, Matt? Obviously, we've spoken about the defence there, but Wrexham made two pretty big high-profile signings from a League One point of view in the summer. How have they sort of done since coming in? I've seen Sam Smith scored a couple of goals. The one away at Northampton was a particularly good one. I feel like the Jay Rodriguez experiment hasn't yet worked. I feel like Parky's maybe persisting with him. And also, what does that mean for someone like Paul Mullin, who's been at Wrexham, pretty much since the beginning of this journey under the new Americans? Where does that leave Paul Mullin? Because you've got so many strikers on the books. Mo File scored again last night. That you'd think would tell him. You've got Dolby out on loan at Dundee. So talk to us a little bit about the striking options that you've got and how they're getting on.
So Dolby is in the last year of his contract. He'll probably either stay at Dundee or he will move on. I'll take the Mullin one first because that's the most. I've got a bit of recency bias after last night because he came on as a sub last night. Yeah. So Mullin's challenge has been that he's missed 2 pre-seasons due to injuries, and he doesn't look the same player. Doesn't seem to be able to have the same impact. He seems to be really grasping and snatching at chances and opportunities. Looks off the pace, and I think if we try and work out from what we see, i.e. when a player starts or when he comes on as a sub and which other players seem to be ahead of him, I think he's probably about 5th or 6th choice striker at the moment. Mental. It's balmy, isn't it? That's balmy, yeah. Because he doesn't always make the bench even. Last night was the first football he's had in ages. Did
you see it coming though, Matt? Because obviously you look at his career, over what he's done. He's been really good in League Two and obviously in the National League for you lot. Did you? I mean, personally, from an outsider's point of view, when I saw Wrexham coming into the league with Paul Mullin as like their number 9, I wasn't massively worried in terms of as an opposition fan. I was thinking if they're going to play Paul Mullin against us, I think we'll be absolutely fine. Do you think, based on what he's done before, he's never really been able to make that jump into League One, has he?
No, so historically, obviously, he's not made an impact in League One. I didn't think like you did. I thought he would be able to. I don't think I haven't written him off as yet because I think the injuries have been bad ones for him. To miss 2 pre-seasons is really tough because I don't think he's ever relied on pace or strength. I think he relies on his intelligence and his movement. So in the right team, I think he can survive and thrive. But I'm not sure that Wrexham is going to be that team anymore, given that we seem to have moved on now, don't we? In the interim period, we've then I guess Parkinson would say we'd upgraded, which I guess is the best. That might be the segue into the front 2 for us. Smith looks really good. Lively he's off the mark. He can hold the ball up well. His movement is good and he looks a menace for people. Jay Rodriguez is the one at the moment that looks a little bit lost for us. Has missed 3 or 4 gilt-edged chances in the games that he's had. So there then comes the pressure of, well, hang on, we're paying you supposedly big money to come in and take those chances. And you've come from a higher level, so there's more expectation perhaps on him. And I think he's going to be the one that we're going to have to be patient with and give him another 4 to 6 weeks and hope that he can get a goal, get some confidence. And as they go along, that front 2 will get some understanding and some interplay going so that they do look like a threat of a pair. Because at the moment, it's not a pair that looks like a York and a Cole. Pick your favorite front pairing.
Mullin and Palmer, sure.
Well,
Sheringham and Cascarino.
Quinn and Phillips, whatever. Pick them from your favourite clubs over the years. At the moment, it doesn't look, but then it's new, isn't it? So I get you'd say it's not going to look like that already. But I think Smith looks like the one who's made more impact as of now. But we need him to start firing because we've got a massive week coming up. Yeah. Just listening to obviously you two talk about Bolton, etc. We've got Bolton on Saturday in an early kickoff at the racecourse. If that doesn't go, bear in mind we've talked about our results, haven't we? The two on the bounce. I don't know what you're going to call a 2-2 draw where you lose on penalties. So let's call it. It's definitely 2 defeats on the bounce, isn't it? In the league. And then Bolton come to town, who are evolving under Shuey, and I think it wouldn't surprise me at all if come 2:30 we're walking dejected out of the racecourse because they're a good side with good players, aren't they? Whether you've got any loyalty or not to them, or you like them or you dislike them, I think they're going to be the ones that come late.
Yeah, possibly. Matt, where are you feeling are you feeling different to how you felt last time you came on the podcast? More apprehensive, more confident, about the same?
So for people who don't know, I predicted Wrexham would finish outside of the playoffs at the start of the season. And I still think that's the case. I'm not, well, I haven't seen anything to convince me that we're going to be the team that either gets second or it feels to me like the start of a slide gap.
Even with an 8-point cushion to the 7th, and 3 teams between yourselves, and
it could be 5 if Bolton do something, and then we're away at Huddersfield, and I know you're saying Huddersfield are in bad form, but then a wounded animal can be dangerous, can't it?
Yeah.
So
okay.
So in the next week, we could that could change, couldn't it? Let's just be realistic. Let's not be daft. The flip side is we win one of those games at least, and you or 2 of them, and you're feeling much more confident. But
if Wycombe lose at St Andrews and you win, you're actually level on points with second.
Correct.
So.
And then I look daft and I look stupid. But I'm watching what I watch is a team that. Sometimes we get away with it, and that's not sustainable, is it? I think you hinted at that, Jake, and said with your visit to Lincoln, your visit to us, that it isn't sustainable just to rely on a piece of brilliance, is it, late on?
I said it about Pompey last year, Matt, and they went and threw it in my face. So I won't worry about that.
Perfect. So can you say it again then? Because I'll be delighted if. Listen, nobody will be more happy than me if we do. But I've watched a lot of. I'm 47. I've watched a lot of football, boys. I've seen what can happen. I've seen. We've all seen the signs, haven't we? You've seen how it can either go brilliantly or look at last night that we were singing "Que Sera Sera," we're going to Wembley, and then
yes, I saw that.
Lo and behold, they score the equaliser in whatever it was, the 91st minute.
Couldn't just wait the extra 3 minutes, could you?
But football fans don't do that, do we?
I know. Matt, thanks so much for giving us your insight on Wrexham. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks very much, boys. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Take care, mate.
Well, Jake, I suppose I don't feel like we've been really sold on Wrexham so much, have we, in terms of them as an automatic promotion prospect? Little bit. How would you kind of sum them up?
I wasn't expecting it. I genuinely wasn't expecting. I know they lost a couple at home, and obviously maybe it's the slight reaction to going out the cup when they maybe thought they were going to go through last night. I still think Wrexham have got quality in this team, Gab. I think when it comes to the fine margins of the teams that we're talking about, I think Wrexham are the ones that I think more than Wycombe and Stockport would get over the line if they really needed to. I wasn't expecting Matt to be so damn beat. Obviously, 3rd in the league, newly promoted. It's been a hell of a season for them. Like that they've just got to try and get back on track at home. If they can go and beat Bolton at the racecourse, I think we're talking about a Wrexham team that are well and truly back on track. And
that game on Saturday feels like it's got huge connotations from lots of different angles.
Yeah, because even if Bolton go to Wrexham and win, all of a sudden that's a big statement. And the teams above them, your Leyton Orient, your Charltons, your Huddersfields, be nervously looking over the shoulder, going, "Crikey, Bolton are struck up their engine." So
Well,
no, it's interesting, mate. Yeah.
certainly is. I think one team that would be hoping to capitalise from Wrexham failing to win on Saturday would be Stockport County. So I'm delighted to say that we can be joined by Russ Johnson from the Scarf Bagara War podcast on the Hatters. Russ, good evening. Thanks so much for talking to us. 6 wins in your last 8, albeit with a 2-0 loss at Cambridge last time out. Feeling pretty positive about the Hatters, the trajectory the Hatters are on at the moment in the post-Louis Barry era.
Yeah, absolutely. Feeling pretty good about it, to be honest. It's almost like we've become a better team without Louis Barry, which at the time that he left, I think a lot of County fans wouldn't have said that or believed it if you'd have told them. So, yeah, really looking forward to this close end of the season, this business end, and yeah, Cambridge, I think I'm going to put that down to a bump in the road, all things considered.
Do you know what, Russ? I think it was the worst time possible to play Cambridge in the whole season, because I'm a Birmingham City fan, right? And we played Shrewsbury away in November, and it was Gareth Ainsworth's first game, and it was literally because it's the instant impact, like a popular manager coming in and having that instant impact on a relegation struggler. And I think if we'd played Shrewsbury any other time of the season, we'd have gone there and won. I think if you had probably played Cambridge any other time of the season, I think you'd have probably won. It's just sometimes the fixture list throws up these games, and I'll give you a bit of leeway for that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, let's not brush over it, though. Cambridge deserved the win. Aesthetically, we weren't pleasing on the eye, although the stats, if anyone wants to look at them post-match, we did do our usual thing, and we created more, we had more possession. It just didn't sit right with us. And with all things considered, new old manager bounce, if you like, as people have been calling it, they just came out and did a number on us and almost dragged us down to their level. No disrespect, because they are bottom of the league, but that's what they did, and fair play to them. I don't think that'll happen again, hopefully, this season, in terms of that level of team beating us, fingers crossed. But what I am expecting on Saturday is a reaction, because the last time we lost and it hurt us, against Wycombe at home, 5-0. We went and beat Bolton the next game 5-0 at home. So, yeah.
I think they came up against Josh Stokes, who's a pretty tidy player to be. And if Stockport are thinking, who can we try and sign on loan next year, I think Josh Stokes would be a particularly good player to go and pick up. But you look at the next couple of games, Ross, we're talking about Blackpool and Northampton. But after that, Charlton, Bolton, Wrexham as a 3. How important is that run going to be if Stockport are really going to propel themselves into this automatic promotion run?
Yeah, I think they're the games, they're the set of games that really says, are we serious about it? Well, maybe not serious about it. Are we capable? If we can get results in all of those matches, two away, Bolton and Wrexham. I hate going to Wrexham. Just put it on record. Never win there. So it wouldn't surprise me if it was 2-1 and we lost in the 97th minute or something daft like that. But yeah, you're right. That's where it'll be, because after that it's Burton, then Stevenage, Exeter, Rotherham, Peterborough, and then the games at the end, the 3 at the end are probably, if we're still in it by those 3, and if we get results out of the last 3, which is Huddersfield away, your Lincoln away, Jake, and then Wycombe away. Huddersfield at home, Lincoln at home, and then Wycombe away. I mean, if we get second out of all that, we deserve to get second, really, don't we? We've not pulled any wool over anybody's eyes. But yeah, you're right. Blackpool's still going to be difficult on Saturday. They're a completely different team to the one we beat 3-0 away earlier in the season. Got a new man, obviously, Steve Bruce, and probably different players as well. And yeah, Charlton, Bolton, and Wycombe, not for the faint-hearted.
Talk to me about Ollie Norwood, Rask, because he's not somebody that's ever relied on sort of pace or athleticism anyway, and it's not like he's a complete veteran in his late 30s or anything like that. And to get him for League One, given that he's a recent Championship promotion specialist, that looks like, bargain of the century, doesn't it?
Yeah, signing of the season as well, I think. He's so good. He sprays the ball out like nothing we've ever seen at County before. Well, certainly not since the 90s when we got to the Championship last time.
Chris Marsden, right? You had him in, didn't you? Yeah, before we went to Birmingham.
Yeah, we had Chris Marsden. We got him. I can't forget where we got him from. Oh, Wolves, I think it might have been. But yeah, he was sort of similar, probably a bit more defensive minded. But yeah, we've not had a player like this since then, and we're just loving every minute of watching him play. He just controls the game, and we're talking at the top of League One here, in games where he's top of League One. So he sprays passes out left and right. He just looks like he's got loads of time on the ball. He's good. I'm surprised he's not the captain, to be honest, but that was an early decision with Bate, obviously, with Lewis Bates. So he's just great. And then I think when you bring in as well Nick Powell to the fold, and you look at the midfield we've got then in Camps, Norwood, Bate, Powell, arguably, and then Bailey and Collar playing off him. It's not a bad midfield, is it, for you running?
And losing Louis Barry, Russ, a lot of people will have made a big deal about that, and rightly so. He was. I remember when we played you guys at the Bank, and we narrowly won. He was outstanding. I thought he was excellent, and was unfortunate maybe to get a penalty, maybe not. We'll agree, maybe disagree on that one. But do you think it sort of made the rest of the squad who play in those positions, your likes of Jack Diamond, your Alafes, Collars, players of that ilk, step up, and automatically then the quality goes up, and then you're not maybe missing the individual brilliance to bail you out sometimes like you did with Louis Barry?
I don't think so, no, because I've honestly not seen a real improvement in Jack Diamond. Yes, he's had more minutes, but his output in terms of his final ball has not really been that great. Collar's been Collar for years. I mean, he has a bit of a dip, but he's generally a 7 or an 8. He'll dip to 6 sometimes. And Wootton just does what he does. I keep on saying it, spends sort of 70 minutes in a headlock, grappling and doing all the off the ball stuff. So no, I've honestly found it really difficult to put my finger on what's, where the levels have gone up in terms of sort of filling that gap where Barry left. And maybe there wasn't even a gap there, when he left, the others just sort of pitched in, because nobody's written. I mean, we've got Mika Hamilton in on loan to kind of replace that penetrator role, but he's not had the minutes. He's got nowhere near the first team by all accounts. So
was it you, Jake, who really liked Mika Hamilton from what you'd seen of him in youth?
Yeah, at Man City. Yeah, he scored. I came on here, didn't I? Say he scored in the Champions League away at Belgrade or somewhere like that for the first team, and then I was really surprised that he'd been sold to Middlesbrough. So when he went on loan to Stockport, I was incredibly surprised, and I'm really surprised he's not specifically playing on that left-hand side like Louis Barry did. I'm really surprised he's not really made much of an impact, because he's the exact similar sort of profile, quick, gets down the line and looks to beat a man, but he's not. If he can't get in the team, it must be telling you that the lads that are already in, that got the shirt, must be already playing out of the skin.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Charlie's very honest in his pre and post matches. If you're not pulling your weight and you're not achieving the numbers, and if you come in and get your chance and don't show him that you want to take it or you have taken it, then he sort of doesn't pull any punches, and he will manage the squad accordingly. So the fact that Hamilton's not getting minutes says to me that it's more him in terms of Hamilton himself and what he's doing in training and what he's done when he's come on. For me as a fan, even when he's come on, he's not really done that much for me to warrant giving him more minutes. And you've got to take your chances while they come. So yeah, it comes with a good pedigree, but not really seeing him. There's other players that have been ahead of him that have done better. In Jack Diamond, even though he's not sort of producing those final balls.
Do you think, Russ, that it's almost been an advantage for Dave Challoner to come up the leagues with that experience of having managed, right in the lower echelons of non-league with Colwyn Bay? Because at those levels, people just call a spade, and therefore I wonder if he's come up to a level like League One with a fresh perspective, because he's not sort of had this kind of media trained thing where other coaches that have come from maybe higher leveled or more experienced EFL managers, they'd be thinking, oh no, we've got to protect the players, we've got to put our arm around them, when actually sometimes it's better just to call things out and be upfront with it, and it seems like fans kind of respect that.
Yeah, he openly admits. Does he openly admit he's not had media training? I can't really say that for sure. But what I can say for sure is I know that he's sort of learning as he goes along. I think he said that from Colwyn Bay all the way through to us now. This is the highest he's managed. I think what he's done really, really well is kept his own identity in terms of how he wants his teams to play and how he manages himself. He talks a lot about he likes players that are adaptable, that adaptability. So you can see that as they go through the leagues, they'll look for that in the recruitment of finding players that are adaptable, so he can set the scene in terms of how he wants them to play, shape, passages of play and all that kind of thing. But he wants them to react in game to different scenarios. And we've talked about this on my podcast recently about how he's really, really good at and his coaching staff are at getting that into the players. And I think as he's gone up the leagues, he's probably the only thing really that's probably changed is the quality of player. I think intelligence in players is probably the same. You're shopping in the same markets in that respect. It's just the quality of the player. So I think he's got a module, if you like, and a model, and I think it's working. And as he goes up the leagues, only time will tell where that gets him to. But I said it on my podcast. I've said it since he came, or since he certainly came and he sort of bedded in. He's learning as he goes along as well, and he's just about to finish his pro license. We found out the other day, and that'll be in June. So he's obviously got the wherewithal to get us that high in terms of the coaching badges. So it's really exciting for him how far he'll go. I think he'll outgrow County in the end. I really do.
Yeah, he strikes me as someone that has complete control over that dressing room. So I remember the day that you came up and he took Corey Dye off at half time, and he basically not hung him out to dry in the post match, but he wasn't extremely pleasant with him. I was disappointed. I thought he was actually our best player that day, which is a real shame. If we can talk about the window Ross that Stockport have just had, do you think it's strong enough to propel you into that top two conversation? I thought Owen Moxon was an outstanding acquisition. The lad from Iceland, we don't know a lot about him. Brad Hills, I love Brad Hills, and I loved him at Accrington. And I watched, I think it was his debut in a home game. It was on Sky. It was nearly kickoff. Was it Barnsley? Thought he was outstanding, outstanding then as well. Sam Cosgrove to come in and provide perhaps a little bit of coverage for Kyle Wotton when his legs are getting weary. So, do you think that was a good enough window to give you a real shot of going up automatically?
I think it's a good enough window to give us a shot. I'm not sure about good enough. Just pick on that nuance there, because we needed backup for Wotton, so we've got that in Cosgrove. I spoke to the Barnsley pod, and they said, yeah, he's, without him even saying anything, they said, yeah, he'll hustle and he'll bustle and do all that off the ball stuff, which is what Wotton does, and he does it really, really well. I don't think there's any better in the division for doing that. Briony Becky, and we'll call him Anderson. Emerging talent, so you can almost sort of not chalk him off. He'll be on the bench and he'll come on every now and again. Hills, I was really, really impressed with Hills in that first game as well, as you were bringing it out from the back. We didn't really know much about him apart from what we'd seen in terms of Accrington, so he was a real surprise. And our thinking is, well, based on that, what's his name? I forgot his name. Fraser Horsfall. There you go. He's been out that long. Yeah. I forgot his name. Is he going to struggle to get back in now? Because Hills, Pye and Connolly have just been so good. Pye was out on Saturday. Connolly got sent off in late on. So we're going to need that depth. The one that excited me was Moxon, because he was so good. He was so good in that league. I think he's perfect
for a Dave Challoner system as well, with the energy that he's going to bring as well, and that long-range passing ability.
Yeah, absolutely. He was so good in that League Two season, and he was man of the match against us at Wembley when we got beat by Carlisle on penalties. So I was delighted when we signed him. He's not really took off as maybe other players would in terms of debut and second game, third game. I think he's just gone quietly about his business. I think his time will come, and he'll get better as he gets used to the way that we play and the system that we have. So he's the one that really, really excites me. And I think all of that. I thought the window added great depth, but when you put Hills and Moxon in that, I think they're challenging for the first team, and that just makes the first team better. Plus, we've got that depth as well. So I'm going to stick with my original sort of thought, which was I've changed my expectation. By the way, I said a 12th or above at the start of the season, but I'm going to go with the thought of the director of football, Simon Wilson, and he just said, let's just enjoy the ride. So if we can push Wycombe and Wrexham, let's hope we can push them all the way and have an exciting end of the season.
Well, let's hope you can do that. Russ, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the sports science side of Stockport County. Difficult to know exactly from an observational capacity, but there were a lot of injuries that you had last season, and I believe the start of this one as well. Is that something you feel like the club's been sort of quite conscious about looking into and maybe tweaking the way they go about things?
Yeah, I think they're always looking into everything. I get this sense that they've got a lot of, not to get the sense, I know they've got a lot of people in a lot of departments, so they're always constantly looking at that. I know just through interviews with Will Collar and Fraser Horsfall that Charlie sets them targets, so intensity minutes, ground covered, all this kind of stuff. So they've got loads of metrics to meet. Fraser Horsfall even said that when I think we were beating somebody, I can't remember who it was, he said, and he was shouting over to Horsfall. We were comfortably in the lead, and he was going, "Horse, you haven't met your intensity sort of minutes targets." So you need to sort that out. So
you wouldn't have got that 20 years ago, would you? You've not met your intensity targets.
so this is it. So they do all that, and having spoken to Charlie a couple of years ago, I asked him the actual question about player loads and how he deals with that. And they say they monitor all of that. They obviously don't go too heavy in terms of what they're putting on the players in training. And they look at, the pitches and all that kind of stuff of the opposition if we're playing away. They obviously know the pitch at Edgeley Park and what that's capable of and what we've done to that. So, I just get this feeling that we've got a really, really good handle on it. And when we did have all of those injuries, a lot of them were impact and not to do with load, on knees and ankles and things like that. So I think we just went through two really bad spells of being unlucky with impact injuries in the main. Some of the fan base were saying, when we were getting, oh, well, we've had 3 knee injuries. Well, what are the the physios doing? Do we need to change the physio staff? It's like, well, not really. No, I think it's just unlucky. I think we've got good people behind the scenes looking at load balancing and how many miles they've covered or kilometers and intensity minutes.
Jake, what would you like to see from Notts County to be more?
Notts County,
Notts County. Sorry, Stockport County. Getting the counties mixed up there. What would you like to see from Stockport County? Sorry, to sort of be more convinced by their automatic promotion credentials. We're holding them to high standards, obviously, because they've come such a long way.
God, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? If I give an answer, then Dave Challoner is going to simply just put it into practice and they'll get automatically promoted. So what I say here, I have to be very careful with. I don't know with Stockport. Sometimes I feel like they've just got to occasionally, and this is where you compare them to these high standards that they've set. They've just got the odd blip in them from time to time, whether that's every 6 games, every 8 games. They've just got not a stinker, but a performance where you just think, really, is that all you can muster? And obviously the weekend was one for away at Cambridge. I can think of another couple, maybe the draw away at Bristol Rovers recently where they nicked it in the last couple of minutes. The game against Mansfield, obviously at home as well. So they have this odd clangor in them. And when you want to get automatically promoted, you just got to be consistent, certainly at this end of the season. And what I think about Stockport is they've been pretty good at beating the lower teams in terms of the teams right down at the bottom of the table. They've just got to be able to continue to do that because they still play a lot of those teams that perhaps haven't got anything to play for, but also they've got to beat the teams around them, haven't they? They've got to play Wycombe still on the last day. That could be a straight shootout for second place. That could be interesting. They've still got to go to they've got to play Huddersfield, Wrexham, Bolton, like we say, Charlton as well. So they've got big games. So what I want to see from them is go and make a statement, like go and win away at the racecourse, or beat Bolton and you'll be backed by thousands, hundreds of thousands of fans because that's what Stockport do away at Bolton. So I would say if they're going to go and win automatic promotion, they've got to go and make a statement. They've got to go and win 3, 4, 5 in a row and go, right, well, we're not just here to make the numbers that yes, it's our first year. Like we were just talking to Matt about Wrexham. Yeah, it's our first year, but we can make a fist of it. And if they can do that, then they stand every chance. So there's your answer, Dave. If you want to go and get it written down.
Russ, I'd love to ask you more about Will Collar, just because he's someone who and I suppose Carl Wotton you'd put in this category as well. They seem to step up with every challenge that comes their way.
Yeah, they do, and they're both. Well, Will Collar's loved by the fans. Wotton's a bit of a, I wouldn't say Marmite player, but he has his critics, and I think he has his critics for those that just count him on the number of goals that he scores, which is not a lot. I don't know the facts exactly, the figures exactly, but he does a lot of work off the ball, as I said before. So he definitely steps up with us, and for me, he's been brilliant. And there isn't a better player in the division that does what he does. He occupies two players at times, holds up the ball really well. Probably should score more, but he's got quite a few assists as well this season. So I'm really pleased with him. Will Collar. I mean, we call him William Guy Collar, $1 Million Collar. He's just brilliant. He loves the club. We love him. He can play out on the left, centre, right. I interviewed him at the start of the season, and he was more last season and the seasons before. He was more midfield, sort of box to box. This season, he said in that interview, "I've told the gaffer I want to play further forward because that's where I want to. That's where he sees himself, and that's what's happened. And he's just brilliant for us." There'll be a sad day when he goes. It really will. We love Will Collar.
Yeah, absolutely, and certainly, that work that Carl Wotton does to maybe pave the way for Isaac Collioff to maybe really getting on goal, because he's been brilliant as well. Listen, Russ, it's been great to get your insight on Stockport County. To
yeah. Want to call him Newport, Gab, before he goes?
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us, Russ, and keep up the great work on the Scarf Bagara War podcast.
Cheers, Gab. Cheers, Jake.
Cheers, Russ.
Cheers.
See you later.
So our third and final guest of the evening is James Richings from Bucks Free Press. You look a little bit like you're doing a video diary from 1 a.m. on a trip somewhere.
Yeah, the lighting isn't the best, but I can see you guys, and hopefully you can see me. So hopefully it's all good.
Okay, you look like it would be in a tent.
I can assure you, believe me, I'm in the comfort of my own living room, so it's all good. It's all good.
Oh, that's good. Well, it's all good for Wycombe Wanderers this season as well. How do you feel Mike Dodds has sort of settled into the new job?
Well, he's very much settled in the sense that he doesn't want to change too much. That's been the mantra since he joined. It's very rare for a manager of any team in any division to come into a side that are sitting second in the table. It's very, very rare, especially at this stage of the season as well. So he knows what's at stake for Wycombe in order to get promoted back to the Championship. He's seen how good they've been all season, so he doesn't want to change anything drastically at this point. So he's tweaked a few things here and there, and he just wants to continue the work that Wycombe have done so far. And even though he's only won one of his 4 games in charge, he has drawn 3, and in those 4 games, Wycombe have kept 3 clean sheets. So there have been some very, very good signs, as we saw against Bristol Rovers, where they didn't really get out of third gear and managed to get the win. But then there were times, for example, against Wigan last week, where Wycombe just couldn't find that little bit of quality up top, because 1 goal would have settled it. So it's been a steady start so far.
Yeah. Do you think there were any concerns, James, given the fact that he wasn't a well-known name in terms of first-team management? We've seen lots of clubs in League One over the last maybe 3 or 4 years appoint these coaches that have come out of the academy system or behind the scenes. Did that, when he was appointed, or that was the appointment that the club made, did that slightly give you a little bit of nervousness or tentativeness going into the last sort of 15 games of the season?
Not personally for me, no. I think when you look at Wycombe's recent history of new managers, especially when they had Gareth Ainsworth and obviously most recently Matt Bloomfield, at the time, very, very new, inexperienced managers. I mean, Bloomfield only had, I think, 4 or 5 months at Colchester. Gareth Ainsworth only had 2 stints at QPR as a caretaker. So I think that's very much part of the Wycombe DNA. You don't need to be, I guess, a big name to come in and do what you need.
Just on that, James, Martin O'Neill was right at the start of his managerial career, I think, as well, when he managed Wycombe Wanderers.
Exactly that. And obviously at the time, completely different generation, but everyone would have known what Martin O'Neill was like as a player. But as a manager, it's a completely different kettle of fish. And look how successful he was. Took Wycombe out the non-league into League One in, I think, 2 or 3 seasons. Absolutely incredible. So for Wycombe, Mike Dodds wouldn't have been someone that they would have just plucked out of a hat. They would have looked at all the names that were out there available, and they need to match it to what they think is right for themselves. And with Wycombe, they're going down a route which isn't what they usually done before, where they want a head coach, so someone who's just simply working with the players, rather than a manager who has a say in signings and whatnot. They just want a player who deals with the day-to-day on the grass rather than what goes on in the boardroom. And Mike Dodds, at this moment in time, ticks all the boxes for the Wycombe hierarchy, and so far it's been okay. Obviously 3 draws and 1 win from 4 games doesn't look that great, but you look at it and think no losses yet, and Wycombe have kept 3 clean sheets in that time.
Certainly have. The creativity issues in terms of breaking teams down has been a bit of a challenge, Wigan being one of the examples. I think Northampton under Sam Grace as well. There was a feeling based on the Bristol Rovers game that Xavier Siemens, who I think he got from Hull, could have been a solution to that. But I'm wondering, but it seemed like those issues sort of persisted in the draw with Wigan, in contrast to what he produced against Bristol Rovers.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Xavier Sims has come in and he's been fantastic. He had a brief cameo against Crawley, and we're thinking, okay, this kid is good, as we've seen with his at his time at Hull City. And he's now come into the last 2 games, and you can just clearly see his quality, and it really has made a difference. Obviously, with Aaron Morley going back to Bolton, Wycombe really needed to try and get a player similar to his ilk. And Wycombe did make 2 bids, I believe, for Morley. Both were rejected, so they knew they weren't going to get him, so they had to find someone of a similar type of player. Xavier Simmons was available, and they snapped up the opportunity in signing him on loan with the option to buy in the summer, and he's slotted in like a glove. He really, really has. And I honestly think he'll be starting now, between now and the end of the season. There won't be any way he gets dropped unless he gets injured, because he was fantastic against Bristol Rovers. Played a part in both of Wycombe's goals that night.
Yeah, another man that's come straight into the team, James, since signing, Will Norris, after leaving, I think it was Portsmouth. Do you feel like that was maybe a little bit harsh on Franco Ravazzoli? Because from what I remember when we played Wycombe, I think it was in November, or I can't remember because we lost 3-2. It was a really good game, actually. I feel like I've watched a few Wycombe games this year, and he's played particularly well and made quite a lot of big saves and big moments. Do you feel like that decision to maybe drop him for Will Norris, who obviously won the league last year, do you feel like that was maybe a little bit harsh on Franco?
I believe it was. I mean, it's a really interesting discussion, because Franco Ravazzoli has very much split the fan base. Not him personally, but a lot of fans think he's a second keeper and he might have the odd good game. He's not good enough to be number 1, whilst other fans think he has done exceptionally well and shouldn't have been dropped. The Wycombe goalkeeping issue was always a topic of discussion, because at the start of the season, it was actually Nathan Bishop who was number 1, played the first 2 games, got injured. Franco came in, didn't put a foot wrong. Then come January, Shamal George gets injured. Bishop then leaves and goes to Cambridge. So you're going to have to find another goalkeeper. Will Norris hadn't played since October, and his last game was actually a 6-1 thrashing for Portsmouth against Stoke.
Yeah, I was there.
Were you there? Yeah, so since then, he was banished, really. He wasn't even part of any matchday squad. So Wycombe needed a goalkeeper. He came up, and he was in the PF. He was in the team of the year last season, and he's a very good football league goalkeeper. So unfortunately for Franco, he's just been the victim of another quality goalkeeper coming in. And it's the position that nobody really wants to be, because it's very hard to earn your spot as a goalkeeper, to be number 1, if you've got someone who is just as good as you in front of you. But I won't say anything negative about Franco Ravazzoli. He's kept Wycombe in many games this season. The game that sticks out of my mind was away at Wigan, 1-0 up, and then for the final 20 minutes, Wycombe were under the cosh, and he made 3 world-class saves. One of them was an injury time stop against Theo Asgard, and if that goes in, Wycombe aren't second going into this game against Birmingham. on Saturday lunchtime. So I think he was hard done by, but at the same time, Will Norris has come in. He hasn't really put a foot wrong, and Wycombe are being very brutal. They're being very cutthroat. They want to be a championship side. So they're not saying that Franco Ravensoli hasn't done well for them. They just think Will Norris is just as good as a goalkeeper. He won promotion with Portsmouth last season. Why shouldn't we play him? So it's hard on Franco, but the club need to do what they think is right to get promoted.
Interesting. How's Jasper Pattenden getting on?
Yeah, I mean, he played his first game in 2 months over the weekend. Didn't put a foot wrong. He was chomping at the bit to get back. And whenever he's played, really, he looks so mature for his age because he's still in his early 20s. I think he's 22. I could be wrong, but he's around 22, 23. And he plays like a veteran. He just bombs up and down that right flank. He gets himself about. And for a right back, he's also quite stocky, not stocky, but he's quite muscly. He's quite big, so he gets himself about. And having him back on Saturday is a huge boost for Wycombe because the right-hand side has been a bit of a, I wouldn't say a weakness, but we've played Declan Screwer at right back at sometimes when Jack Grimm or Patton's been injured. So him returning is a huge boost. And I can also say in our chats today with Mike Dodds, he confirmed that Jack Grimmer is now back in the squad. Brilliant. So that's another option for Wycombe on the right-hand side.
He's going to be huge because he's part of that leadership group now, very much Jack Grimmer, isn't he? So I'm sure he'll make a big difference, his leadership qualities as well as his athleticism in the running, because I'm sure he's a very influential character. Richard Kone back in a Wycombe Wanderers matchday squad, James. You must be really excited about the kind of difference he can make in the last 2 months.
Oh, very much so. I mean, prior to his injury, he hadn't missed a game all season in the league, 19 goals in all competitions. Luton making multiple £1 million bids for him. He's been Wycombe's player of the season. I mean, along with a few others, he's been fantastic. But I think one thing Wycombe have done is that they don't want to rely everything on one player. They want to have an arsenal of players that they can rely on. So if Kone does get injured, who can come in? Dan Udo scored in back-to-back games prior to the weekend. He's done okay. You've got Bez Labala, who's in double digits for the season collectively. So Wycombe are very much getting their players back, but Richard Kone is very much the main man up top. And he's proved it time and time again. And it's not necessarily how he scores his goals. It's the timings of when he scores his goals as well. I mean, last-minute winner against Barnsley, when Wycombe weren't playing great. He's missed a couple of penalties this season, but he smashes in the rebound. So him being back is a huge boost for Wycombe. And going into a game against Birmingham on Saturday where it's going to be a full house against, let's be real here, in a Premier League-esque stadium, this is the sort of things he wants to be playing in long term. So him being back for this game is a huge boost. I don't know if he'll start because obviously he's still fresh from his injury. He did come off the bench against Wigan, but it's a massive boost for Wycombe.
Certainly is. Jake, I wanted to come to you because just listening to the guests that we've had so far this evening, we've had Matt Jones from the Racecourse Ramble, who even suggested the possibility of Wrexham dropping out of the top 6, which shows that maybe he's not in feeling hugely positive that they're going to finish in the top 2. We've got from the Scarf Bagara or Russ saying that, we're kind of going to enjoy the ride at Stockport, but not exactly super bullish. So do you think that the circumstances could play into Wycombe's favour that although we do have this bit of uncertainty about how good Mike Dodds is going to be as a number 1, they do have a 3-point cushion right now over Wrexham, and arguably Stockport are the stronger of the two, and they're 7 points above them. And also they've got key players coming back. So, the way James is talking, should we be talking about Wycombe as the clear favourites?
I think so. I think it may be circumstance that the other two just don't seem to want it, and it might just fall at Wycombe's lap, and they might just get over the line. But like James says, they're having Kone back between. If they can keep him fit, fully and firing, I think he's been probably the best player that I've seen play at Lincoln so far this year. He's outstanding that day. it's not just his goals; it's his link-up play and it's his ability to run the channels, and that ability and what he's gotten for so young. It's going to be a massive part as to why Wycombe are going to accrue points. You look at the amount of points that he's probably won Wycombe over the course of the season, you're probably talking to nearly 10 points just by his goals alone. So they can keep him fit, keep him getting points. And what I really like about this Wycombe team, Gab, perhaps maybe a little bit more than I do about Stockport and Wrexham, is the depth at League One level. Like James was talking about the front four there, you've got Kone out deservedly so as the main man, but you've got Bez Labala, who's been good at this level for Burton and for Northampton. Cam Humphreys, I mean, he had a little spell in that Ipswich team that got promoted, didn't he? And he's been stepped into the team really well. Gareth McCleary, do I need to say any more? He's been
he's very fit, isn't he, Gareth McCleary? I think he
how he does it. I get worn out just watching him run up and down. I seem to remember
it's a vegan diet, Jake. He
I'm not bothering with that, mate. Yeah, I can't be not trying that.
He shows no signs of stopping. He says he wants to play until he's at least 40, and I think he's about 36 now, 37. So he's in his head, he's still got another maybe 2-3 years, and he's already been at Wycombe for 5 years. And it's very rare for a player to join a club in their mid-30s and get close to a decade playing for them. So
imagine if he was 35 and you gave him a 5-year contract. That's looking like a decent idea.
Yeah, the way he's going, you might as well start vlogging games and start putting them on YouTube like Tafasoli used to do. But yeah, even the players on the bench, Dan Udo was a really useful weapon for Shrewsbury last year. Fred Onyedinma has been successful at Wycombe, certainly over previous spells as well. So they've got the depth all over the pitch, even at centre half. Like they've got Sonny Bradley not playing, but it's all right because they've got Joe Lowe and Caleb Taylor, which is completely fair. So like they've got ridiculous amount of depth, and Wycombe I think Wycombe just need to tick along, and I think they could well find themselves getting over the line. You don't perhaps it, like James says, Dodds has just come in and not try to change a lot. Well, the Wycombe that were motoring along before Mike Dodds came in were an outstanding League One football club, and if they can just continue to do that, they stand every chance of falling into second place.
I mean, Jake's hit it on the nail on the head of the nail, because you look at the start of the season, Wycombe were blowing teams away, scoring 3-4. I mean, away at Stockport, scoring 5 goals. Wycombe don't score 5 away from home. When was the last time that happened? So it's been an incredible ride. But then you look at since the start of this year, I think it's important to remember, whilst Wycombe haven't scored as many goals as what they did early in the season, Wycombe have only lost 1 game this calendar year, and that was at home to Huddersfield. Wycombe have played 10 times this season. This calendar year. Drawn 5, won 4, lost 1. That was the Huddersfield game. Preston, even though they went out the cup, it counts as a 0-0 draw. So Wycombe haven't. It's been a bit stuttery, but Wycombe haven't fallen off the wagon as some people have suggested, because obviously they're not winning as many games if they're drawing a lot. But if Wycombe just keep doing that, then they just need to focus on themselves. Mike Dodd said it last week. He said, I'm not looking at Wrexham, I'm not looking at Birmingham, I'm not looking at any other team. I'm focusing on Wycombe, because if you focus on anyone else, you're going to not focus on what you need to do. So Wycombe can win 1-0 between now and the end of the season. It's going to be enough to get them up. They don't need to batter teams like they did at the start of the season. Now it's just about getting the job done. Wycombe have got 14 games now, 14 huge games. And let's be real, they're not going to win every single one. There are going to be games where they're going to drop points when nobody would be expecting it. But that happens. And as Jake mentioned, the squad depth at Wycombe is unreal. I mean, they signed, I believe, someone might watch this and correct me, but I think they signed 15 players in January, 10 of which were for the first team. They signed these 2 Danish players, broke their transfer record fee in the space of about 5 or 6 days. And those 2 players have only played 5 times between them. So these are very exciting times for Wycombe Wanderers, something that were completely alien 5 to 6 years ago. So if Wycombe don't go up, they could always go again next season. But at this moment in time, the aim is now. I mean, playoffs now would be a disaster, considering how long Wycombe have been in the top 2. They've been in the top 2, I think since September. So to drop out will be disastrous in that sense. So just focus on themselves, keep doing what they're doing. Hopefully they can get over that line.
Let's hope that's the case. Could you talk in a little bit more detail about Cam Humphreys, James, and how key he's been to the creative side of your play this season?
Oh, the Suffolk Messi is what the fans have called him. He's been so good, honestly. And that was a Matt Bloomfield link. Obviously, with Bloomfield's links to Ipswich, knowing the club, being a fan of the club, he knew what Humphreys could bring. And he's come in and just absolutely shone. He really has. He reminds me of a. I know it sounds a bit silly saying this, but he reminds me of a very young Cesc Fabregas. The way he can pick out a ball, the way he can just see things that no one else can see. Got a good tackle in him as well, but he's been very, very good. The only thing I will say is that he doesn't like using his weaker. I think
Right.
he's left foot. That's
He's
it.
right-footed. Yeah, he's left-footed. But yeah,
He's left foot. He doesn't like to use his weaker foot, and there have been times where you think, just give it a go. He likes to cut back on his stronger side, and that has somewhat stopped play or slowed play down in recent games. But I think other than that, he's been a breath of fresh air, and he's been so important for Wycombe's season. Him, Morley, Caleb Taylor, all these players that have come in, they have played a huge part in what Wycombe have done so far, and it shows. Only 4 defeats in 32 matches this season for Wycombe Wanderers. It's incredible.
Yeah, I think the Fabregas comparison is a bit of a stretch, but only because Fabregas played deeper.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. No,
Yeah.
I get that.
Humphreys is more of an advanced player. That's why you wouldn't compare him to Fabregas.
But the way he picks out a ball is the way he picks out a ball. It's brilliant. It really, really is. He can really put it through the eye of the needle, and I think that's what Wycombe need. They need that sort of creative player just sitting behind the front two to try and sort it out. And he's been brilliant. So if he gets injured or whatnot, it'll be a big blow. And there were talks of him potentially getting recalled, but thankfully he stayed, and he's showing his
one
worth.
Of the Danish Scandinavian lads he brought in was an attacking midfielder, right?
Vestergaard, yes,
Vestergaard.
Yeah. He's unfortunately with the Danish players, when Wycombe signed them, it was their pre-season, so they weren't fully fit, and they're slowly but surely getting back to it. So hopefully by the end of the season, we would see a lot more of them. And there will be obviously long-term investments based on the amount of money Wycombe have spent on them. But at this present moment in time, they've only made sporadic appearances in the matchday squad.
I did just want to ask about the mentality, James, if I can.
Of course.
You spoke there about if Wycombe got into finishing the playoffs or finished third, that would be a disaster season. Let's say worst comes to the worst and Wycombe do finish third. What would you think of the mentality of this group? Because it is demoralising. I've sort of been in that position ourselves, being in the top two almost all season and then finishing in the playoffs, which feels quite demoralising, and going into them perhaps with not as much momentum as you can do. I think Northampton did it a couple of years ago in League Two, Gab, didn't they? Where they lost automatic promotion on the final day because of Bristol Rovers, and the playoff campaign was almost a write-off. Perhaps, what do you think of the mentality of this group? If they were to finish in the playoffs, would you back them to stand up and be counted for and go and win them?
I would like to think so. I mean, you look at the Wycombe team, they're full of leaders. They're full of people that you want to be around, and they're full of motivators. As we touched on it earlier, you got someone like Jack Grimmer. He would run through a brick wall for you. He has that warrior sort of attitude that you need to try and get through these tough moments when things aren't going very well. Obviously, it's going very well for Wycombe, but that isn't to say there isn't going to be bumps in the road between now and the start of May. As we spoke about Gareth McCleary, who's been part of many playoff campaigns, he will know the ins and outs of what you have to do. And then you look at the other players around it. You've got players like Richard Kone, who's very young, but at the same time, he's very mature in what he wants to achieve. So if Wycombe, God forbid, do drop into the playoffs, the attitude and the positivity around Wycombe was like, okay, we're in this position. Let's just try and get out of it. And I wouldn't be surprised that if Wycombe go in the playoffs, I would expect them to get to the final. I really would, based on how they've played this season, based on their attitude, and based on that determination. Because I think it's important to mention as well that when Wycombe were last in the Championship, there were no fans to go and witness that. And it's 5 years on, a lot of Wycombe fans still talk about how that opportunity was in a way taken away from them from things they couldn't control. And that still gets talked about. So the players are fully aware that they want to be playing in the Championship in front of those fans who weren't able to be in that position 5 years ago. So if they do go in the playoffs, they will fight tooth and nail to try and get to Wembley and get promoted, because they want to do it not just for themselves but for the fans who missed out on a glorious opportunity during COVID.
Are we looking at Joe Lowe and Josh Scowen, and maybe even Caleb Taylor as the Mr. Consistencies of the Chairboys this season?
Oh, Josh Scowen has always Mr. Consistent. He really is. He's brilliant. He's one of the first names on the team sheet. If anything, he's probably the most important player. Josh Scowen, since he returned 4 years ago, he's hardly missed a game. So he's very much Mr. Consistent. Joe Lowe and Caleb Taylor, imperious at the back. Obviously, you're going to make mistakes. There's going to be the odd game where they're not on it as well as what they could be, but 9 times out of 10, they are always good. They really, I mean, you look at the start of this season, the amount of clean sheets Wycombe were getting, the amount of wins they were. Wycombe went 19 games unbeaten in the league. They played, I think, in pretty much all of them. So it just shows how important they were during the early days of the campaign. If they're not in the team of the year, I would be very shocked, honestly, the way they've played. And I think what people underestimate is that they're very tall. I know centre-backs have to be tall, but when you look at them, they are taller than what you expect them to be. Gabby, I think you've seen, as well, they are huge. So you're not going to, the aerial duels, you're not going to win them. You're just not. So you look at those 3 players. Those players are key starters. They have to be in the squad. But then if one of them isn't, for example, let's say Taylor's out injured, you got Sonny Bradley who comes in, and
experienced Championship defender.
Exactly, and he knows he knows what to do in League One. So the squad depth at Wycombe is good. The starting 11 is pretty much what it is, bar the odd change here and there. So you look at the table now, 14 games to go. Wycombe just need to keep doing what they're doing. They don't need to thrash teams like they did at the start of the season. 1-0 smash and grabs, job done, move on to the next one.
Well, let's hope that it continues that way. James, thanks so much for your insight, and look forward to talking to you again later in the season.
Thank you so much, Gab. Thank you so much, Jake. And I know you're a Birmingham fan, Gab, so I'll be thinking of you at the game on Saturday. I'll be expecting a text no matter the score.
Top man, James. All the best, mate.
Have a good evening, guys.
Cheers,
See you later.
Cheers.
Bye.
So, Jake, having spoken to all 3 of the immediate contenders for second spot in League One, how would you rank them in terms of your fate, in terms of likelihood of getting second? If it is that, I mean, I'm kind of assuming we're, as a Birmingham City fan, that we're going to kind of run away with it.
You say that so humbly, Gab.
We're playing Wycombe on Saturday as well. I could have egg on my face after that, but I mean, points per game at the moment, we're projected for 108 points, so I think it's reasonable. But for me, I would probably from the conversations we've had today, I would say Wycombe, Stockport, and Wrexham in order of how big I am on them as sort of contenders for automatic promotion. Would you agree with that ranking, or would you go with something different?
Yeah, I mean, I came into this conversation, Gab, before 6 o'clock while I was already making my chicken, thinking that Wrexham were going to be the ones. I sat down and I thought Wrexham were going to, I watched them on Sunday. Maybe it's a bit of recency bias, but I thought, they can go away to a place like Mansfield and go and get a win. They ground it out and things went against them and they still won. So I was coming into tonight thinking, well, I'm pretty sure that Wrexham are probably going to be the ones that do it. But of all the conversations that we had with Matt and with Russ and with James there, Matt was like the least confident out of the 3. So I understand perhaps you take into consideration their opinion and they're in it perhaps more than you are. So you have to understand that. But I also think what as part of that is the worry. I think that perhaps sometimes when you're in this sort of situation and you're thinking about permutations as that word comes out at this time of the season, that can seep into your thinking. And for me, I know the chat was probably you're the least confident with Wrexham, but I think I'm going to stick with them as my favourite.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See, the argument I would make for Stockport over Wrexham is I think they've got a bit of both, because in terms of stylistically, because they have got good, attacking wing backs like Macaulay, Southern Hales, and Ibu Toure as well, so they get forward and they can put crosses in the box for Carl Wootton, and they can do that. Dave Challoner's been a 3-5-2 guy with attacking wing backs for much of his managerial career. However, they've also got Norwood, getting on the ball and spraying his path. Wrexham don't have a Norwood. They've got Elliot Lee, but they're very, like, when he's not there, they don't have any central creativity, and that's a massive red flag for a team that's supposed to be a favourite. And then you could even argue, like, in terms of defence, one or two question marks there. I'm not sure from the conversation that we've had with Matt. I'm kind of getting cold feet on Wrexham, to be honest.
Well, and then I would put Wycombe second, based on the chat we just had with James. Very positive. I've spoken to him a couple of times. He speaks very passionately about Wycombe, and rightly so. At the minute, they are enjoying a period of success like they've probably never had. Well, not certainly for a long time. Maybe not in someone as young as James at his life. So it's weird, isn't it? I don't know. The one reservation that I have is it was at the start of the night. Gab was the head coach on Wycombe.
Sure.
I know James has come in and said that he's won 1 and drawn 4, drawn 3 of his first 4. But the draws that they have had, Gab, Wigan and Crawley, I know that the Preston game, I'd expect Wycombe to win them if they were going to get automatically promoted.
Yeah.
So
should we have a look at Wycombe's running? I've not had the chance to do this.
I can tell you, Gab, because I have it.
You're better prepared than me, Jake.
I have it up now. So they've obviously come to you on Saturday.
Of course.
Home to Burton, away to Peterborough, at home to Wrexham on the 15th. So that's next Saturday. 2 weeks on Saturday. So that could be massive. They've then got to go to Rotherham. They've then got to travel up to West Yorkshire to play Huddersfield. They've then got the speed camera of Lincoln City visiting, so they'll get 3 points there, no doubt. Wycombe. I've got Shrewsbury then at home, so that's a winnable game. Reading away, tough place to go. Them at the Madstad.
Reading is still in it, yeah.
Yeah, Stevenage at home, I don't think it's a gimme. Bolton away, Charlton at home, Orient away, and stuff like their last couple of games. Their last 4 are Bolton, Charlton, Orient, and Stockport.
So that's, if I'm not mistaken, that's 8 games that you had class as being really tough. Like 18, I think if I've counted them correctly, I think there's 8 teams that are either in the automatic promotion race or in the playoff scramble that Wycombe have got to face.
I've got 8, but I think you could maybe caveat the Stevenage home game. I don't know if you included that.
No, I didn't include Stevenage.
But maybe also going to Rotherham. Rotherham have beaten some good sides at the New York this year. They beat they beat Bolton, didn't they? 3-1.
They beat Charlton 4-2. So they've not been great recently, Rotherham. So I didn't really include them in the 8. Maybe it's more like 7. Really,
of course, Lincoln. That's 9, Gab, right? Maybe not this year. Maybe 12 months ago. It's tough. They've got a tough running, Gab.
Yeah,
they have.
It looks that way, doesn't it?
The only way that you get promoted is by being the best, and you've got to go and win your games, or you got to go and get the points.
However, Jake, you would probably kind of balance the fact that it's a tough run-in with the fact that they've now got Kone and Grimmer back. So that's going to make a huge difference. Like Grimmer with his athleticism and his leadership qualities for the big games, big moments. And then you've got Kone, who's just provides the incredible sort of individual magic, alongside with, by the way, with Daniel Udo, who's by no means a bad sort of backup striker to sort of bring in. He can certainly grab a few goals as well and bring some pace and power. So I think the Kone return could be a huge factor, and that's why I'd probably just about lean towards Wycombe. But it's a really good point. I mean, should we? I don't know if you've got time to have a quick look about the other teams' fixtures.
Okay. You can have as much time as you like, mate.
Oh, you're too kind. So if we look at if we class Wycombe as having, say, 7
Yep. Let's
tough
look at
fixtures
Wrexham.
in the last 14.
Let's look at Wrexham. So Bolton,
Yeah.
Huddersfield. So Bolton at home, Huddersfield away.
Yeah.
Rotherham at home, Reading away, Wycombe away, Stockport at home, Exeter away, Cambridge away, Burton at home, Wigan away, Bristol Rovers at home, Blackpool away, Charlton at home, and they come to the bank on the final day. So
Okay, so that's probably I would say that's 7 really tough games. However, some playing Shrewsbury and Cambridge and Burton at this stage of the season, you could argue is
they don't need to play Shrewsbury, Gab.
Oh, I thought they'd play
Cambridge, Exeter, Burton.
Oh, okay, sorry, I misheard you. So certainly Cambridge and Burton, I think, could end up being tough opponents at the back end of the season because they could be fighting for their lives. So you don't quite know, do you?
I'm not quite keen to praise Burton just after the weekend, Gab, but still a little bit too sore.
Too soon.
Yeah, too soon, Gab. Yeah, no, I agree. I think the trip at the home game against Bolton will be tough. The Huddersfield game, the Reading game, the Wycombe game, the Stockport game.
It's mad. Like they've got a mad. If you look coming up, like they've got 5 really tough games in their next 6 or 7.
I would argue if they can get out of that still in the race, Gab, they've then got a run of Exeter, Cambridge, Burton, Wigan, Bristol Rovers, Blackpool. So that's 6 games there.
Would be fairly favourable, yeah.
If they could win 4 or 5 of those, then you're talking about Wrexham coming and maybe timing their charge just at the right time. So
however, I mean, if I just say Bolton, Huddersfield, Reading, Wycombe, Stockport in their next 6, I think it is. Yep. So I think there's a good chance they're going to drop a lot of points in those games. And that's where I would worry that by the time they get to the more favourable on paper running, they could be too far. They could be too far away from the automatics.
Interesting. I find that interesting. Should we take a look at who's the last team? Stockport.
Stockport, yeah.
Right. Stockport matches. Let me scroll down. So Stockport are Blackpool at home, Northampton Town away, Charlton at home, Bolton away, Wrexham away, Burton at home, Stevenage at home, Exeter away. I feel like these teams have all got the same games. This is mental. Rotherham at home, Peterborough away, Huddersfield at home, Lincoln at home, and Wycombe away.
So that sounds a bit more favourable, doesn't it? Stockport's running. I don't know if that's...
You tell me, Gab. I can understand where you're coming from. I think... Oh, this is really tough, isn't it? This is really, really tough. It's a favourable run-in. They've got some games certainly at home that they'll feel they can win. But like I mentioned with Russ earlier, Stockport have just got a stinker in them. And I think Wrexham and Wycombe are maybe just a little bit more consistent across the board than Stockport. So, like, you say that they've got more favourable games, for example, but like they're the games that sometimes that they slip up in. Like I just think of Cambridge at the weekend, Mansfield at home. They came here and lost as well. So they've got that slip up in them, which is why I'd probably put them third.
Yeah, Jake, I'm just wondering, Stockport going to Wycombe on the final day. I'm wondering, if it's a case where because there could be a scenario where if Stockport win at Adams Park, they get automatics, and if Wycombe avoid defeat, they get automatics. And in that scenario, I feel like I'd be quite inclined to back Dave Challoner for his ability to manage those big games because he's won so many promotions in his career. Yeah. Like his whole career has been, managing those big moments. Whereas Mike Dodds doesn't have that. So I think, would it be fair for me to say that would give Stockport a slight advantage if it came to that, where there's something riding on the final day?
I could see it, but also... Yes, but also we don't know what Mike Dodds is like in a really big game, do we? So, like Mike Dodds, for example, could just come out and win all the big games that we've spoken about there, the hard ones. So yeah, I take your point.
But Jake, I think I see where you're saying. So I'm not writing Mike Dodds off as somebody in terms of somebody who can manage the run-in and those big moments. But we've not seen it modelled before, whereas we have seen it modelled with Challoner.
Yeah.
So I personally think Wycombe have got to establish, have got to basically put themselves in a really comfortable position going into April, so that there's less to manage, if that makes sense, in terms of whereas I think if it gets to really fine margins, I think they might struggle.
Yeah, but it's going to swing week to week, isn't it? In one team's favour and in the other. So, yeah, look, it's nice. I mean, you're pretty much a neutral as it stands, go, because you're that bloody far out in front. You could just
Sorry, I
watch.
can't hear you from.
Yeah, you can just watch
clear at the top of the league.
God, what a nice position to be in. But you can just watch all the chaos from underneath your feet going, oh, yeah, peasants down there, second. Yeah, but yeah, no, I agree. It's certainly one of the more interesting races. I seem to remember over the last couple of years, we've not had 3 or 4 teams maybe make a charge for that last automatic spot.
Because that's the other thing, Jake. Like, I really do think there's room for, given that we're not 100% on any of those 3 that we've spoken about in detail tonight.
Bolton.
I really feel like there's room for somebody like Bolton to really make a run for it. So
yeah, and Cole will be sat there smirking away with a pint in hand, no doubt, knowing our friend Colin Yates. But yeah, no, I agree. I mean, under Schumacher, they are resurgent. They show tactical flexibility. They can score goals, and they can also keep them out the other end. And
yeah,
we've already
McAtee and Collins have got a great understanding, haven't they? So that's
yeah.
really
But you've also got the likes of Sabi Shon, who's come in and had a really good first year. Will Forrest is going strength to strength at the back. So Luke Southwood's has kept Nathan Baxter out of the team, who I thought was one of the better keepers in the league last year.
Yeah,
maybe not as good as Lucas Jensen, but we'll just to shoe on something in there. But yeah, no, I think Bolton. You know, let's see. I mean, we can have a look at Bolton's run, Gab, if you'd like.
Can do, yeah, sure.
Well, if we've got a bit of time. Sorry, viewers, you might want to go and have your dinner, but me and Gab.
No, not at all.
Me and Gab
always got time for you, Jack.
We spent an hour on the phone talking about Lincoln the other day, so let's see what they've got. So Bolton, Gab, have Wrexham at the weekend, Birmingham on Tuesday. Maybe this is where we discount Bolton. Then they back it up with Burton away, Bristol Rovers away, Stockport at home, Rotherham at home, Blackpool away, Wigan away, Bristol Rovers at home, Barnsley away, Wycombe at home, Lincoln away, Peterborough away, and Stevenage at home on final day.
Yeah. So, certainly some tough games to get through for Bolton Wanderers. But if they could take, say, 4 points off Wrexham and Birmingham in the next 2, then they'd give themselves a shot. Jake, thanks so much for joining us. We've just about run out of time. The office is closing. Yeah, that's what it is. That's why I changed tack very quickly there. Thanks to all our guests this evening. You can get to subscribe to the Racecourse Ramble, where Matt Jones does some great content on Wrexham, the Scarf Bagar Award podcast with Russ Johnson, and of course you can follow the Bucks Free Press on Wycombe Wanderers with James Richings, and of course the Here for the Lincoln podcast as well.
You'll be on next week, Gab.
I will, absolutely. Looking forward to it. Get subscribed as well. Get subscribed as well to EFL Debate on YouTube and Spotify, because that would help us out an awful lot if you've enjoyed this podcast. Thanks to you for watching at home, and we'll see you again for another League One podcast next week.